This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
Browns training camp is around the corner. Rookies are going to start reporting soon. And that made me think, what young players, right? First and second year players on the Cleveland Browns, what players have a chance to break out and potentially earn a role on this team throughout training camp? Now, the way I want to format this is in 3 different categories. I'm going to go through all 13 of the picks from the last 2 years. We're going to put these in 3 different categories, right? Late rounders, mid rounders, top 100. The reason I'm doing this is because the expectations for a late round pick, and when I say a late round pick, I'm talking 6th, 7th round pick. When I'm talking mid rounder, it's anything from the 5th round to the top 100. And when I'm talking top 100, I'm talking top 100 draft picks. So the reason I wanted to categorize it this way is because the expectations for a late rounder, or what we would consider a breakout for a late round pick, is much different than what we would expect a breakout to be for a top 100 pick. For example, let's use Nathaniel Watson. If Nathaniel Watson wins a position battle and gets a rotational role on this team, not necessarily a starting one, but a rotational role that gives him about 10, 15 snaps a game, that's going to be seen as a massive, massive win for a 6th round rookie. On the flip side, Michael Hall, who was picked in the 50s, right, 2nd round pick, if he ends camp and only has a role where he's getting 10 to 15 snaps a game, there are going to be people who ask some questions about, like, hey, is Michael Hall living up to it, or are we just going to have to wait like another year to see anything out of Michael Hall? You see how the expectations just scale differently from late round to mid round to top 100. And my fear is, if I ran through this as just a list, I would have the tendency to kind of view a breakout the same way across all the picks, instead of remembering, hey, this guy was drafted in the 6th round. We should view it in the context of the 6th round. So let's get into it. We're going to start with our late round picks. 2023, we're going to start with 2023. First name on the list is Luke Whippler. Do I think Luke Whippler could potentially have a bit of a breakout? I would say kind of, right? A breakout for Luke Whippler wouldn't be starting at the center position, but a breakout for Luke Whippler would be being a backup center that you feel really good about, and somebody who could fill in at guard or be tackle eligible. I think that's definitely something that's possible for Luke Whippler. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I liked him a lot coming out of Ohio State. I liked what he did in the preseason. I like what we saw of him in limited action in the regular season. So Luke Whippler, I will put on this list of late round guys who I do think has a chance to make a little bit of a breakout. Let's go to Cameron Mitchell, the next guy on this list. Do I think Cam Mitchell has an opportunity here to break out? Yes. I think of all the late round picks that we're going to discuss, this guy probably has the biggest opportunity to break out. The long-term future on Greg Newsome is not certain. We're not 100% sure on Greg Newsome's status coming into camp, and that might mean more opportunity for Cameron Mitchell. If Cam Mitchell can come in, play that slot position really well. I liked what he did on the outside as well, and kind of prove that, hey, you don't have to pay Greg Newsome. You can let him go in free agency. He can get his money elsewhere, and you can roll with Cam Mitchell as the replacement there. I think that would be a huge win for this team, and it's something that's definitely in the cards. What I do know for sure is that Cam Mitchell really should win that backup nickel position over whoever it is that they're going to try to put out there, because last year they were dead set on Mike Ford being the backup nickel, and that was just a disaster every time it showed itself. But Cam Mitchell, I like him. I think he has a chance to break out. I think he's one of those young guys who could have a big camp in year 2. Now let's go to DTR. And DTR is weird because you can make the argument that DTR broke out last year. And since he broke out last year, what would be considered a breakout for him this year is significantly higher than what you would expect from other 5th round picks. And I think there's some truth to that, right? DTR started games last year. DTR was the backup quarterback for a good chunk of last year, which means, hey, man, if DTR is the backup again, it's not really a breakout. So that's why I don't think there's any breakout potential here for DTR. He's not going to become the starter. That's not really anywhere close to on the cards for DTR from an opportunity standpoint or even a level of play standpoint. We can all acknowledge DTR has a ways to go before he can be considered starting caliber at this point, given what we saw in 2023, my bad. The Browns brought in Tyler Huntley, you would imagine, to compete for that 3rd quarterback spot, since they already do have Jameis Winston. I don't think you signed Jameis to an $8 million incentive-laden deal just to have him compete for the backup role with Tyler Huntley. So I imagine Tyler's in here to compete for the 3rd quarterback role. And that's an uphill battle for DTR, because DTR is not at this point as good as Tyler Huntley. Like, I think we all need to admit that one. Tyler Huntley was seen as one of the better backups in the league when he was behind Lamar Jackson, somebody who was certainly seen as capable. Now, again, he was a backup for Lamar Jackson, which is a little bit more unique than any other backup position in the NFL, because when you're the backup for Lamar Jackson, you're kind of asked to emulate some of the stuff that Lamar Jackson can do. My thing is, if you have a quarterback as your 3rd option who can somewhat emulate some of the stuff that Lamar Jackson can do, you're probably in a good spot. It's going to be a tough battle for DTR. And for him, his fight's going to be about maintaining his spot on the active roster, because I think that's going to be very difficult for him to do. All right, 2024, Jawan Briggs, I think he would just be happy to make the practice squad. It's going to be a very tough battle. The Browns defensive tackle room is stacked. And there isn't really a lot of wiggle room there. Miles Harden, I believe it's a corner out of South Dakota. Again, another guy I think would just be happy to be on the practice squad. Not the same caliber of players like a Cameron Mitchell coming out. When the Browns drafted him, it was a much better corner draft than this year's was. So Miles, I think, if he can get a special teams role, that would be considered a breakout, but I don't anticipate Miles having a breakout. I don't anticipate Jawan having a breakout or DTR having a breakout. I think those 3 are not going to break out in camp this year. Nathaniel Watson is somebody I do think has a chance to break out, especially from an opportunity standpoint. I think it matches up with what he did well in college. He was a double-digit sack guy from the linebacker position at Mississippi State. The position he's probably projected to compete for is the Sam linebacker position, which is more of a pass rusher hybrid position where they're going to blitz him a lot more. And he seems like one of the guys who is best fit for that. He's going to be competing with Devin Bush, but Devin Bush isn't the guy you remember from Michigan. He's another washout, to be honest. Like, if he wasn't a 1st round pick, I don't think as many people would be considering Devin Bush as a serious candidate to win this competition. But since Devin Bush is a former 1st round pick, and being a former 1st round pick holds a lot of cachet, people are going to look at him as somebody who could start. I don't know if Devin Bush is even close to a shoo-in. I think the Browns like Tony Fields more than him. I think they like a lot of their linebackers, Diabite more than him. I just don't think that I would pencil in Devin Bush to start for this team. Maybe as a special teams player, but I think you can get the same thing out of some of the younger players on the roster. But we'll see with Devin Bush. I doubt you see anything. I mean, like Pittsburgh has tried it. The Seahawks have tried it. These are two organizations that are good enough that if something were there, it would have showed with those two. So I doubt that his third try here in Cleveland is going to be any different. And that's why I think Nathaniel Watson does have an opportunity here to get about 10, 15 snaps a game. I like his pedigree coming out of Mississippi State. I like his pass rush production, and I like his fit in that role with the Cleveland Browns defense. Let's move on to mid-round guys, right? What mid-round guys could potentially break out? Let's start with Isaiah McGuire. Do I think he could break out? I don't think the opportunity is there for Isaiah McGuire to break out, simply because Isaiah McGuire is in a crowded room. There might be some preseason games where he shows some potential, but I think he's going to be somebody who's more prepped to step up once Zadarius Smith is no longer on the roster. But as long as Zadarius is here, I don't think Isaiah is going to have much of an opportunity to shine. 2023, the other mid-rounder, DeJuan Jones, already broke out, right? One of the best tackles. I think he was all first team, all rookie last year. One of the best young players, young tackles in the NFL. So not much there for a breakout for DeJuan Jones. But most certainly you can consider that DeJuan Jones a breakout candidate in 2023 2024, because he's going to start again. So we'll see. And maybe retroactively, thinking about DTR, we can say that DTR retroactively broke out. But with DeJuan Jones, I don't think he's in danger of losing his starting job. And if it is, it's because of some kind of loyalty that the team has to Jack Conklin, not necessarily a statement on his play. With DTR, I think his downgrade of role for the Cleveland Browns, right? Going from the backup quarterback and the quarterback that a lot of people thought would be the potential backup plan to Deshaun Watson if it doesn't work out here in Cleveland, to now competing with Tyler Huntley to stay active on game days. That is a downgrade, right? When you look at DeJuan Jones, there's no downgrade in sight. I don't think he's going to lose status or in danger of losing status here. Let's talk about Jamari Thrash. I do think Jamari Thrash has some potential to break out. I think it's going to be him and another guy we're going to talk about, Cedric Tillman, competing for some breakout potential. But I do think Jamari Thrash has some potential here to break out, because what I think Jamari Thrash does really, really well is improvise and scramble drills. And I don't think the Browns have a ton of wide receivers that do well with that, especially their younger wide receivers. The Browns are going to be putting more wide receivers on the field, so we can say it's a crowded room, but this is one position where you might have four guys on the field at the same time. In some special cases, you might go a true 5 wide set, even though the Browns tend to put a running back out wide versus 5 wide receivers. But you can potentially have 4 to 5 wide receivers on the field at the same time. You're definitely going to have 3. So there's a lot of room for playing time for a lot of different wide receivers. With Jamari Thrash, I think if he shows himself to be somebody who could be really handy in scramble drills, that's going to be something that's going to skyrocket him up Deshaun Watson's list of preferred targets to have on the field. And if Deshaun wants you on the field because he feels like you're a good security blanket and you're a reliable enough receiver that you can do what you're supposed to do, but if the play breaks down, I can get the ball to you, trust that you're going to be where you're supposed to be. If he feels like you're a bit of a safety valve, you're going to play a lot, whether you're a rookie or not. And that's a skill set that Jamari Thrash has that I think is a bit unique to this wide receiver room. Speaking of unique skill sets, you could say the same thing about Cedric Tillman, but in different ways, right? Cedric Tillman's issues last year were he didn't know where to be on the football field, seemingly. Now, I think this has a lot to do with just adjusting from Josh Heupel's offense to the NFL, not necessarily like a bad work ethic on Cedric Tillman, but who's to say that wasn't the case either, or it wasn't some kind of combination of all of these things. Either way, Cedric Tillman needs to have a much better camp this year than he had last year. I think he needs to demonstrate to the quarterbacks, Jameis, Deshaun, and Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey, that he can be trusted to be where he's supposed to be. Because while Cedric Tillman is talented, while he's unique in the fact that he is the one big-bodied and plays big wide receiver that the Cleveland Browns have on the roster, all of those things are true and make Cedric Tillman a project worth pursuing. But if Ken Dorsey can't trust Cedric Tillman to be where he's supposed to be, if Kevin Stefanski can't trust that he's going to call a play call where he's going to be where he's supposed to be, if Deshaun Watson cannot trust where Cedric Tillman is going to be where he's supposed to be, then it doesn't matter what skill sets that Cedric Tillman brings to the table, because he won't see the field. Because if you can't be trusted to be where you're supposed to be, you're not going to be on the field as a wide receiver. And that's the thing. Cedric Tillman needs to spend this entire training camp basically demonstrating to everybody who's important on the offense, I can be where y'all want me to be. Because there were more than 3 interceptions last year where people can directly point to Cedric Tillman not being where he's supposed to be as the reason for those interceptions. And for a team that's trying to cut down turnovers, for a team that is trying to win it all this year, those kind of mistakes cannot happen. You cannot have a player out there who you're worried about might make you throw an interception because he ain't where he's supposed to be. That's the thing with Cedric Tillman, right? Great talent. The potential's there. Immensely talented player. But can he demonstrate that? Can he get the trust of the quarterback, Deshaun Watson? Because I've seen him get yelled at by Deshaun. I've seen him get yelled at by PJ Walker. I've seen him get yelled at by Joe Flacco. I've seen him get yelled at by Kevin for not being in the right space. So that's the thing with Cedric Tillman. Got to be in the right space. Seik EA, don't think there's going to be a breakout there. And while some of these guys, I don't think there's going to be a breakout because it's just not their time, or it's just not there from a opportunity standpoint. With Seik EA, it's not just those factors, right? I think that there's not really much room for him to make an impact this year. I also don't think that the timing is right on this either. But I'm also concerned that maybe he's just not that good. Like, this was the concern of him coming out of Baylor. He was not the longest 3-tech in the draft. He was just really big. Wasn't really a good athlete. Wasn't really an explosive athlete. Didn't really have anything that you thought would translate well to the NFL other than size. And we're sitting here in year 2. Doesn't feel like there's much of a plan for Seik EA. It doesn't feel like the Browns are very enthusiastic about getting Seik EA on the field, given that they drafted Michael Hall, drafted Jawan Briggs, and then also signed Quentin Jefferson, as well as bringing back Shelby Harris and Maurice Hurst. That doesn't show to me that you're really eager for this guy to hit the field. Nothing indicates that the Browns want him to see the field. I have seen nothing from him on the field that would indicate that I would like to see more of him on the field. I just don't see it with Seik EA. I don't think the opportunity is there for him. And I think the fact that the Browns kind of went out their way to make sure that opportunity wasn't there for him is a bit more concerning than maybe some might want to make it out to be this early in his career. Again, he's a second-year player. Things can change, but I don't think the Browns think that, if I'm being completely candid, because if they thought that was true, I mean, they gave Tommy Togiai more of a chance to play than they're giving Seik EA. And Tommy Togiai had worse issues than Seik EA, at least on paper. So that's my whole thing with EA. Don't really know what they're going to do there. Hey, every once in a while, you draft somebody in top 100. Doesn't work out. Seems like that might be the case. 2024, Zach Zinter. I don't think Zach Zinter has the opportunity to break out this year. He's a first-year player on the offensive line. We usually give those guys a little bit of slack there, because the offensive line does take a couple years to legitimately transition from a body style, from a body size standpoint and a strength standpoint. Number two was Zach. Even though he's not coming off that injury, well, he's coming off that injury, but he should be fine to go at the start of camp. He's not going to start over Joel. He's not going to start over Wyatt. And if he's the backup to one of those two guys, it's not that big of a surprise because he was a 3rd round pick. So for me, I don't think he's going to break out. I don't think there's any reason for him to break out. I don't think there's really any opportunity for him to break out. Less is a statement about how I feel about him, and more of a statement about, the fact that he's a pick that you want to break out maybe next year or the year after. Michael Hall is the last guy that we're going to talk about. And I think Michael Hall does have an opportunity to shine here. Yes, it's a crowded defensive tackle room, but this is a player that the Browns invested a pretty early draft pick in, at least early for the context of the Cleveland Browns, because they've drafted like 1 first-round pick, 2 first-round picks in the Stefanski Barry era, and maybe 2 second-round picks, JOK and Michael Hall. So I do think that the Browns think very highly of Michael Hall. I think that they think he's somebody who can make an immediate impact. Now, he's not going to start. I don't think he's going to start. I think Shelby Harris is going to start, and then Dalvin Tomlinson is going to start. I think Maurice Hurst is going to be in that rotation, and I think there's an opportunity for Michael Hall to compete with Maurice Hurst to take that role in the rotation, or to split that role in a rotation. And if Michael Hall can get that role, I think that would be seen as a win and a breakout for Michael Hall, especially on the first year as a defensive tackle. So I do think there's some opportunity there. The issue with Michael Hall is that he is a very similar player to Maurice Hurst, right? They're pass rush first defensive tackles with similar builds and similar strengths and weaknesses. And the Browns might just opt, if it's close, to go with the older player because they're in a win now situation. But I do think there's a chance that Michael Hall can demonstrate that he is a plus level, or potentially a plus level pass rusher at the defensive tackle position, and then get more of a role than what Maurice Hurst had last year. But that's my thoughts on the young players on the Cleveland Browns that have a chance to break out, who I think will, who I think won't, and why. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.